Okay, so somebody is saying that certain negative emotions arise because of unmet needs, but actually they arise as a result of previous unwise actions or karma that we have performed, which is simply ripening in the present moment. And so this person continues, while we can find a relative cause of the negative emotion, unpleasant feeling, because somebody said harsh words to me. In fact, we experience anger now simply because of past karma ripening, and so on and so forth for the other negative emotions, like being unappreciated, tired, anxious, jealous, and so forth. No. Okay, we do not experience those emotions because of karma ripening. We experience situations because of karma ripening. We experience the emotions because of our present ignorance, our distorted conception, our incorrect ways of interpreting situations that make the afflictions arise. Okay, so karma only ripens in the situations. Karma does not make you have a certain emotional response to a situation. Remember, afflictions cause karma. It's not that karma causes afflictions. Okay, you have to be very clear. Otherwise, he's, oh, well, I got angry because of karma. As if, well, it's predestined and I have no control over it. And no, you experience whatever situation you experience as a ripening of karma. In that situation, you have a choice of how to respond emotionally. Most of us don't take that choice because our mind is overwhelmed by ignorance and distorted conceptions that produce afflictions, and then we just play out our same old emotional patterns or emotional reactions. But those are caused by the present activities in our mind, not by karma. Okay, try and be very clear about that. Otherwise, you're going to get really kind of confused.
I've also read and heard that karma ripens as feelings.
Karma, but feelings means pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. It doesn't mean feelings as in emotions.
No, I know that, but
Yeah.
once you do have an unpleasant feeling, painful feeling, an ordinary unenlightened person will most probably become angry.
Right. That's because that anger is not is not a result of the karma. The feeling is the result of karma. But like I said, we always have that choice. It's just most of us don't take that choice.
A lot of people don't know they have a choice. So.
Huh?
A lot of people don't realize they do have a choice. It's
Yeah,
just so automatic.
that's true.
There is a connection between karma and feeling. Feeling is like a
feelings,
basic,
pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Okay, we respond to those feelings, but our response to the feelings is what's going on now in our mind. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, of course, one thing produces another, but we can't just say, well, just karma ripened, so I got angry. No. Karma ripened, you experienced this situation, you had an unpleasant feeling. Yeah, you responded to that feeling with anger. What we're trying to do in our Dharma practice is respond to that unpleasant feeling and say something to the effect of, well, it's a result of my negative karma ripening, not the feeling, but the situation is a result of my negative karma ripening, so I don't need to get mad at the situation, or that person who did this is suffering, so why get mad at them? So what we're trying to do in our thought training practice is change our response to the different feelings that we get instead of just running on automatic all the time.
I understand that afflictions like anger are motivating actions, But also one of the disadvantages that we often read about or hear about with different emotions, afflictive emotions, is that we become habituated to them. They're easier to arise in the future. So how does that work?
That's because you're strengthening the seed of the afflictive emotion. Remember I explained last time that between two moments of anger, it isn't that you're totally freed of anger forever, but there's a seed of anger. So every time we get angry, we increase the strength of that seed. It's like every time, you have a compassionate heart, you're increasing the seed of your own compassion. Okay? So we strengthen the seeds of the different mental factors in our mind. Okay, here's something else about karma. Okay, so how do we determine the limit of our responsibility of what to purify after complex events? For instance, in a family with twins, one who becomes an exemplary adult and the other does unwise, illegal things, where does regret lie? Regret lies within the people who do the negative actions, or it should lie there. Okay? So, if you have two twins, one grows up well, one doesn't, that could be a result of their own individual karma and situations that, that they're facing. It's a result of their own habitual mental habits, the strengths of the different seeds of afflictions in their mind.
Well, maybe it'll help someone. This really is a parenting question. Because I think parents spend a lifetime haunted by their strengths and deficits. And then when you get into purifying, even though a part of you knows that the outcome of your children is their life, not what you did, it's hard not to feel responsible for their weaknesses.
Yeah.
So when you're purifying, in what you're saying, there's nothing to purify, it's all them.
Yeah, I'm saying if your child, like, there was just this kidnapping case, and the boy who did it, he was only 21 years old, he's responsible for his own actions. His father was in court sobbing,
His parents are probably just in hell.
Yeah, totally, I would assume, in hell. But the parents are responsible for their own actions. Okay? So if while this kid was growing up, they beat him because they were angry, they're responsible for the negative karma of beating the child. But they aren't responsible for what the child does, because the child has their own mental factor of intention, which is karma. Okay? So if you encourage somebody to act in a certain way, then you accumulate karma because you were involved in that action. So if we encourage people to be charitable and generous, then we create good karma when they actually make offerings. If we encourage people to be angry at their enemies when they're angry and they retaliate, then we incur karma from that too, because we encourage them to do it. But if the parent wasn't encouraging the child to do something, then, the parent is not the person responsible for it. Okay, in a large complex family where several generations have contributed to the breakdown of a marriage, who carries regret? That has to be, each person who contributed to the breakdown of their own marriage and who acted negatively, they're responsible for their own actions. Okay? If you have, a family dynamic that goes from one generation to the next, each person is responsible for their own physical and verbal actions. Okay, so if somewhere down here this couple breaks up, they can't say, well, I broke up because my grandparents broke up. You know, they can say, oh, I saw that model, I was conditioned by what I saw before. But they made their, and that conditioning was an influence on them, but they created their own karma, that led to the breakdown of the marriage. Okay, in terms of their own actions. Of course, if somebody comes in and starts a fight, that's a different thing. But yeah, you can't say, well, our marriage broke up because 5 generations ago, this has been a habit in my family. Yeah, those things we learn from our elders, but our elders are not causing us to do those actions. Okay, so we have to remember karma is the mental factor of intention. So that mental factor of intention exists in each one of our minds. And that mental factor of intention is what, is influenced by a mental factor such as compassion or resentment or jealousy or faith or whatever, and being influenced by another emotion or attitude or view, then that mental factor of intention, motivates to do an action. Okay, so I can't motivate you. I can't crawl inside your mind and, give an electric shock to your mental factor of emotion to get it going while you're sleeping. Okay. Just think if the Buddha could do that, he would have, we'd all be great practitioners by now. Yeah. But, all we can do is say things and do things that influence people. But it's up to their own minds and their own mental factors of emotion, of intention to, motivate and generate an action. Let me get through with this first, okay? When we are mean to a partner in the morning, who is mean to the secretary, who is mean to her children, and on and on. Okay, so how much regret can be purified in this chain of events? Again, each person is responsible for their own words, their own actions. It isn't, I kick somebody yells at me, so I kick the dog and the dog bites somebody. It doesn't mean that the person who yelled at me has to purify the dog biting somebody else. It's all different mind streams, each with their own mental factor of intention. Okay. But what your question does lead us to is seeing that since we do affect other living beings by our behavior, if we care about them, then we want to affect them in a good way, not in a way that is going to water the seeds of their disturbing emotions. We want to water the seeds of their good qualities.
It was just a point in the previous question of I'm in the process, of course, of purifying my relationship to the family too, but the key part for me is that I had the karma to be born in that family also. Mm-hmm. So it's just a piece of it as well. The conditioning is whatever the conditioning was, but I had the karma to be born there.
Yeah. So you received that conditioning because you were born there, but you always have a choice. Yeah, it's just we don't take our choice.
Last week you said that the erroneous ways that we think about ourselves were not karma. And you were associating, I think, with mental factors. But I wonder if they could be wrong views. If we're holding ourselves to exist in a certain way, low self-esteem or however.
Wrong views are mental factors.
But they're also paths of actions. So they're karma.
Yeah, but I'm talking about them here. Yeah, there's 2 wrong views. One wrong view that is a mental factor, and one that is the development of that mental factor that becomes a pathway, a path of karma.
What is a wrong view that's a mental factor?
Okay, when we talk about the 6 root afflictions, the last one is afflictive views. Wrong view is the 5th of those 5 afflictive views. That's where it's found. Okay, so it means things like, actually the mental factor of wrong views and the path of action of wrong views have slightly, they're slightly different. I mean, not only in terms of the path of action being something that's been developed for a long time, but in terms of what actually constitutes the thoughts. But the mental factor of wrong view, if I remember correctly, is denying something that doesn't exist, like denying the 4 truths, denying the 3 refuges, denying, nirvana, things like that.
Differentiate the difference between ignorance and wrong views. How do you see those two? How do you
Yeah. Okay. Ignorance is defined differently by the different tenet systems. Okay, but basically, ignorance it's a not knowing of the nature of reality, or an apprehending of things as existing inherently, which is the opposite way from how they actually exist. Okay, whereas wrong views are beliefs that you hold. The 3 jewels don't exist. The law of karma and its effects doesn't exist. Okay, so the wrong views would, I think, I mean, certainly because there's ignorance in the mind, then you come up with the wrong views. But it's put out as its own mental factor.
So I was wondering the thing about going from contact of feeling to craving.
Yeah.
So isn't the idea that you can cut it between the feeling and the craving?
Exactly.
And wouldn't it be the case that you could have a mind that was so aware and calm and together, let's talk generally, not technically, that you could see the unpleasant feeling arising and not have aversion?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
That's
point of
what
how
I
you
mean.
cut it then?
That's when you cut it. That's where you have the choice.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's important to remember, so then, I mean, because if we realize that we have choices, then there's the possibility to take that choice. Whereas if we think, oh, somebody criticized me, the only possible response I could have is to have hurt feelings and be angry at them, then when are we ever going to practice Dharma? Where's Dharma? If you think like that, how can you practice Dharma? Yeah, you think, yeah, it's the natural response everybody would have. Yeah, you get criticized, you feel hurt, you get angry. That's the only response anybody could have to being criticized, completely normal and natural. Yeah, if you're an ordinary being in samsara, that's normal and natural, but aren't we trying to get out of samsara? So getting out of samsara means we have to swim upstream, which means, what society considers normal and natural, we have to question. Yeah, and if we don't question it, if we just think it's the only possible way to feel, then how are you ever going to stop your anger? What do you think will stop your anger? Yeah, if you don't think that after the moment after something unpleasant happens and you feel a bad feeling, if you don't feel the moment, if you feel like that after that moment, your emotional response is pre-programmed and there's no choice, then how are you going to practice the Dharma? You can't. So it's at that very moment that we have to say, okay, what's going on here, and apply the antidote. Or if you miss that moment and you get angry or whatever it is, then you go back and you apply the antidote so that you cut it and you don't keep being angry and ruminate and then make it become the path of action of malice where you're really plotting how to get to the other person. Okay. Yeah, so we always have to feel that there's something we can do. Otherwise, you know, we're wasting the Buddha's time. How are we thinking we're going to get enlightened? You know, if we can't change our responses, how are we thinking we're going to get enlightened? Yeah. Do you think just reciting Vajrasattva mantra by itself without trying to control your temper or trying to control your bad moods, do you think that by itself is going to get you out of samsara? I mean, we have to do something now with what's happening now. Okay.